This, my dear, is the greatest challenge. The greatest challenge to being alive, to witness the injustice of this world and not allow it to consume our light.
In Portugal, there's a YouTube show full of fun facts you need to know. Carl rings the bell and the members show to the GMP morning show. Featured guests will come and they will blow your mind. The audience will do so in kind. The little vanity mixed with some insanity on the morning show with GMP.
Good morning, Portugal, and I'd like to welcome you to another fantastic day.
Hey, Gumpers.
Hold on a minute. That says the Iberian FM phone in. That's not right, is it? Have I lost my original back? Have I deleted my? No, I can't believe I've done that. We might have to be an entire show made of the Iberian FM phone in. I can't believe I've done that this morning. Anyway, good morning to you. Alabon de Alegria, Munson here with the good morning. Well, the Iberian FM phone in, a special. It would appear this morning. Normally, the Good Morning Portugal live stream, the Good Morning Portugal show live stream and podcast. But I can't. It seems like I can't do that today because I've lost my my normal screen graphics. I wonder if I've got them anywhere as well. That's pretty poor, isn't it? I think we're going to have to go with an Iberian FM phone in for the whole show this morning. And a strange thing happens when there are. You might have noticed this is a little production insight for you. You might have noticed that we work on a 4-week cycle, basically. So, you know, we'll have James is one of the exceptions. James, Mindful Migration James, is here every Monday. And all our other guests and co-hosts tend to be once a month, and they'll be on, you know, the second Tuesday or the third Thursday. And we tend to cover days or days of the week or weeks of the month, 1 to 4 weeks. Now, on a 5-week month, which is what this is, it gives us a lovely chance to add extra guests and do something a little bit different, which is what we're going to do today. So let's go with this flow. It is, of course, the Good Morning Portugal show. However, I can't find the right graphic to put on the screen. So we'll roll with this Iberian FM phone-in thing. And we will be asking the question today after a bit of a Gumper gathering, after we've had a chance to come together and see how everybody's doing and check in at around 9. We'll ask that question. And I know it's, you know, in some ways it's like, yay, great, we can answer that question. Expat, immigrant or foreigner. And, you know, on the other hand, it's like, oh, God, not again. Have we not settled this? And I can understand how people might feel both of those sentiments this morning. However, I don't ask it for hits and giggles. I ask it because we are endeavoring to expand our organization, our mission as the Portugal Immigrant Network, as an offshoot of the Good Morning Portugal endeavor. To look at, I mean, if I read from the website, the Good Morning Portugal website, there is a page which is the Portugal Immigrant Network, and it's all very new and very experimental, prototype. It's an effort to. Let me just read what I suppose is like the mission statement. The Portugal Immigrant Network (PIN) is hoping to represent individuals and national identities of foreigners coming into Portugal. Our intention is to support people to enjoy their new life in Portugal so they can integrate successfully and ultimately make a positive impact, a sensitive and appropriate impact on the new culture into which they're coming. So that's, maybe I should stick that on the screen actually, or maybe even do a little screenshot and share it. Yeah, I'll share the bigger screenshot from the website. But if you will, I'll link to that into the chat. So let me just move those things around behind the scenes here. Ask you how you're doing, of course, as well. Do let us know how you are in the chat. We will season the discussion with a lovely question or a set of questions that came in, which include approaching kindness, friendship, poor service, being a guest, and cultural differences in Portugal as well. So we will have a wide debate, but the main focus will be to have a look at this question with a particular context, not to cause trouble, not for people to get the chance to virtue signal their political position, because that to me tends to be what happens. And there's loads of opportunities to do that. And you can walk into any Facebook group on the web and just ask the question or just make the statement. I mean, that tends to be what happens. Excuse me. I made myself cough there was a controversy cough right there. And I see there's a few names. Yes, you can call in. Absolutely right. You can call in, Ernest Furtado. It's great to see you here this morning. Give us a moment, and the name is the number is the name is the same. The number's the same as ever, and of course you can call in. That'll be great. Honeymoon Always also in this morning. So maybe a few people for whom this idea has caught their attention. And, you can walk into any Facebook group and say, I don't know why these people need to call themselves expats. They're foreigners. They're immigrants. I don't know why they need to do this. It's outrageous. It's disgusting. It's rude. It's ignorant, blah, 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 blah. And, I don't think much comes from those. People become even more divided. That's a good result, isn't it? In an ever fragmented or increasingly fragmented and divisive world. We roll slightly differently here at Good Morning Portugal. Our aim is to respect and honor differences, but to have a sense of togetherness from that. Wouldn't that be I know it's a cliche, but unity in diversity, if you like. No need to make other people wrong. If you do think they are wrong, then why not engage in intelligent conversation with them and not begin with a put down? I don't know if you've noticed this, but beginning with a put down is a really bad way of trying to get people on side. You're an idiot, and here's why. And I hope you'll come round to my way of thinking. It doesn't tend to work out very often. I was going to say, just look at America. That tends to be, I'm no disrespect to my American friends, but that does seem to be the tone and timbre of public debate, doesn't it? You're wrong, and here's why. And what happens? People become more and more divided, it would seem, as a result of that particular kind of approach to conversation, and dare I say, even friendship as well. And, most nations seem to be going that way as well, don't they? So, and social media is an accelerator, catalyst, and turbocharger for such behavior as well. But let's see if we can do something a little bit different after we've had something of a Gumper gathering. And as I say, seasoned, not Susan. That's interesting, isn't it? If you were a woman called Susan, or even if you were a man called Susan, of course, you could come out with a range. If you were a chef called Susan, is what I meant to say, or a cook. Oh dear. Then you could come up with a range of Susanings, couldn't you? But I'm going to Susan my conversation this morning with some other questions as well, insights and observations. Raf, not your average globetrotter, was going to send us a message. You can do that as well. You see, you asked the question, Ernest, is there a number you can call in on? And it's on the screen there, 00351 913 590303. Why not make a note of it now and put me in your contact book for those mornings when you want to call into the Iberian FM phone-in? So it's 913-590-303. And around 9 o'clock, we'll open up the phone lines. And I will do a little bit more explanation about the Portugal Immigrant Network as well, and what our aims are, to give the context. If you just want to be right about your chosen word, this probably isn't the phone in for you, really. Go and cause trouble and feel really good about how right you are and how much more intelligent you are than other people on a Facebook group. That's probably what they're meant for. We're going to do something a little bit different here this morning, although it's difficult to stay away from that sort of thing. But we shall see. We shall see this morning. Shannon, how lovely to see you here as well. Let's do some name checks, shall we? And shout outs to Abai Randy, who's in this morning. Shannon. Paul, Simon's inspiration for slip sliding away. People who haven't been here for a while will think, what? Who is that? That's James. Francis is in. Honeymoon Always, great to see you. We have a Swede in Portugal. Lovely to see you here. Ernest has joined us. Owen, good morning to you, Owen. T-Duck. And as one of the wise men of the Gumpocalypse who was in early this morning. And Coach Turner was first in with the bon dia. Como estás? Come back to training this afternoon and coaching a couple of groups this evening. But first, coffee with Mrs. T. I love it. It's almost an autobiographical title, is it not? And the God Squad tip of the day then. The mention of olive oil yesterday seemed to provoke some discussion. And wasn't that great? When discussing nutrition, it's important, of course, to emphasize that we're all different. Some will have allergies, others an intolerance, while we all have preferences. That's true, isn't it? We're united by different preferences. Isn't that? Yeah, there you go. That's another way of looking at this debate we're about to have today as well this morning. Is it a debate? Is it a discussion? It's an exploration, I would say. It's the expat, immigrant, or foreigner exploration. This week, however, coming back to the God Squad tip of the day, I am just talking about what I find useful and enjoyable. I see what you did there, Coach Turner. While we may be tempted to cut out carbs, they do form our readily accessible energy source. Well said, because what? Oh, did you hear that gasp? I've left the patio doors open today, and I've also allowed the dogs to come in this morning, and that's why you could hear, well, the two things, maybe the rain hitting the slabs outside, because it's really very wet this morning, and Mrs. M walking into the studio and going, seeing the dogs in the studio. Does it smell nice in here? It stinks, she says. See, to a cat person, the smell of dog is extra accentuated in the hooter. I've got a cup. I'm nursing a cup of tea here, but I seem to have a little bit of a sore throat this morning already. And I would have expected to have one about 10 o'clock this morning after our conversation this morning, but I've already, it started early this morning. So I'd love a creamy coffee if I may. I can't find, Mrs. M's so observant. She's saying, how come you're doing the Iberian FM phone in now? It's because I can't find the backdrop. I think I might have deleted it by mistake. Or one of our children, like deleting apps off my phone.
Oh, you know what?
What?
He deleted my phone off my phone.
He's such a little anarchist, that boy, deleting apps off our phone. Anyway, going back to carbohydrates, carbs. And I do understand, as Coach Turner does here, and he's prefaced and contextualized his comments this morning as personal preferences. But let's talk about these, because it depends what you're trying to achieve, doesn't it? That's the intelligent thing about all the conversations we're having here this morning and at all times. What's your objective? Before you start telling everybody what the right thing is to do about everything, what is your particular objective? And as the Coach Turner is saying here, while we may be tempted to cut out carbohydrates, they do form our readily accessible energy source. I certainly haven't reduced the amount I eat, but I still enjoy potatoes, rice, and pasta. And that's why you love Portuguese food as well, right? Or cooking or restaurants. My favorite way of using potatoes. Oh, here we go. With some potato pornography here. My favorite way of using potatoes is to slice them about 1/4 inch thick and place them on a baking tray. Drizzle with oil, a grind of salt and pepper, and bake at 180 degrees centigrade. Jimmy, be careful. Remember the last time you started jumping about in the studio and pulled all the lights over? Mummy might be right here. If you're going to be a pain, you're going to have to go back outside. Now sit down, get in your box, and you're welcome to stay for the show. With no jumping about, thank you. So drizzle with oil, a grind of salt and pepper, and bake 180 degrees for 30 to 35 minutes. I'm salivating already, Coach Turner. How could you do this to us this early in the morning? A variation is to sprinkle. Who doesn't like a sprinkle first thing in the morning? Chopped rosemary on as well. The potatoes are done when they have a few browned bubbles form on the surface. Yes, those crunchy bits. Now you can push it a little bit, can't you, and get some extra crispiness and enjoy that extra crispiness with your seasoned chopped rosemary on the top there. Salt and pepper, but a balsamic vinegar maybe. Other suggestions will have no doubt come in as a result of your wonderful serving suggestion, which is the God Squad tip of the day. Thank you very much, Coach Turner. Good stuff. Looking forward to the rest of this week's God Squad tips of the day. And great to hear, for those of you who weren't here last week when Coach Turner revealed that he's in the top 5 of Masters sprinters in the UK at the moment. Nice work. And that's why we're delighted and proud to have him as our advisor on these matters. As growing old, disgracefully, have a little bit of flexible and kind fitness to the body for the bon viveurs. Okay, gentle fitness. Bon diagria for the gumpers from T-Duck as well at 7:59. And to follow up on yesterday's diet discussion, olive oil is 14% saturated fat. How is that healthy? Because I think there are other views on the fact that saturation is not necessarily a bad thing. We were, I think wasn't it the margarine industry who told us that saturated fat was a bad thing? And it's not all necessarily bad news with saturated fat. I think we're nuancing the debate about fat, aren't we, into good and bad fats, like we've got good and bad bacteria. I think, I don't know if it's psychological, but certainly yesterday I had polvo, a little polvo salad, not a pole vault salad, but an octopus salad yesterday. In fact, we only went out for these the famous last words. We only went out for a coffee, and we chanced upon the most amazing walk. Mrs. M said, "I wonder what's up that lane." Then we went walking up the lane, and we went behind the great big sand dune, at Celio de Porto. Anyway, I digress, and I might show you the pictures. Yeah, I think I will show you the pictures of that lovely walk, and well, certainly the view that we had from that lovely walk. It was fantastic. We only meant to go out for a coffee and a bit of toast, and there we were enjoying this incredible view, which I'm hastily downloading for you now. Absolutely beautiful up there at the chapel that overlooks the Atlantic, or the Salio de Porto side of the San Martino de Porto Bay. So I am, just quickly downloading a couple of views of that for you. But the reason I'm saying that is because I had a polvo, one of those lovely cold octopus salads, and that was drenched in olive oil. And I felt really very good for having that. I don't know if it's psychological, and if now my veins and arteries are clogged with saturated fat, and that's a bad thing. For me, I have it teed up that that's quite a good thing. I enjoy this sort of saturation of fat, strangely enough, in a way that, but it would appear you don't, and many people don't. And I feel that, that it's quite useful at a cellular level to have a bit of fat, as well as what's not not liquefaction, hydration, and oleation. I don't know if that's the right word. Don't cells need fats as well as hydration as well? Okay, so 14. Oh, it's like 14% alcohol, isn't it? And a good bottle of Portuguese red. Getting excited about 14%. T-Duck's not. I am 14% saturated fat in an olive oil there. Deep thought. That wasn't your deep and oily thought of the day. This is, though. As land is improved by sowing it with various seeds. Wow. So is the mind by exercising it with different studies. There you go. Pliny the Elder. And at about the age of 23, Pliny the Elder entered the army as a junior officer in the equestrian rank. So Pliny the Elder with deep thoughts this week so far anyway. And that excellent thought there, which, is a wonderful context and basis for our conversation today. As land is improved by sowing it with various seeds, so is the mind by exercising it with different studies. So why don't we study each other's thoughts and viewpoints this morning and see if we can improve the land of our minds this morning on the Iberian FM phone-in. It is, of course, the Good Morning Portugal show. We've just gone early into the Iberian FM vibe this morning as we anticipate the conversation about expat, immigrant, or foreigner. Ernest, maybe you'll be first this morning on 913-590-303. At about age 23, then, Pliny the Elder entered the army. See, I don't suppose he was called Pliny the Elder at that time. He wasn't Pliny the Younger, was he? Because that would have been his son. But he was younger, Pliny the Elder, when he went into the army at 23, perhaps. But I'll move on to the Portuguese saying of the day then. Não há fome que não dê em fartura. There is no hunger that does not lead to abundance. Fartura, I thought that was a kind of donut. Used to think it was an invoice. But don't be eating invoices because they're worse for you than olive oil, I suspect. Depends what they're made of. So there is no hunger that does not lead to abundance. Better days will come. There you go. Kind of carrying on yesterday from what doesn't kill you, it makes you stronger. And the pain of hunger can lead to abundance, according to this Portuguese saying of the day. Não há fome que não dê em fartura. So is fartura abundance then, as well as, well, I guess that makes sense, doesn't it? When you see the fartura wagon at the festa, an abundance of doughy goodness, fried in fat and covered in sugar. King Sabia, thank you for it. This is a cracker this morning, T-Duck. The Carrack's black sword, sometimes called a crab sword. Now, does anybody, what was I going to ask you there? Surely I wasn't going to ask you if you've got a sword. I don't think I was I? But suddenly I'm getting into the sort of nautical nature This is a sword designed in the age of discovery, and I suddenly remember that I have a beautiful illustration to show as well here, which again I am hastily downloading. And this is really these are excellent photographs of the sword in question here. Sword of truth, perhaps, that we can bring to our conversation this morning. And I must go look for my Good Morning Portugal backdrop after the show this morning. But anyway, for now, for the time being, let's have a look at the carrax or crab sword. As you see, I didn't imagine Portuguese sailors to have swords. I imagine them to be quite pacifistic, and I think the Ujima flip, the ethic of the Portuguese exploration, as I understand it, and obviously not all Portuguese sailors were like this, were not piratical necessarily. But every time I see something like this, I just want to say, "Har." How do you know? How can you tell a Portuguese sailor? I've made up my own dad joke here, my own pirate-related dad joke. How can you tell a Portuguese sailor? Because he rolls his R's. See? And there's another view of it. Look at that. And the detailing is the important thing around the hilt of the sword there. And you'll like this, I think. If some of you are thinking, that looks fairly phallic, you're right. The carrax black, if others of you weren't, you probably are now. The carrax black sword, sometimes called a crab sword, was invented in Portugal during the 15th century, designed to be used by soldiers and sailors during the Age of Discovery. Okay, and if I could find the next bit, I would share it with you. Here it is. It is characterized by having a guard with 2 protective rings, protecting the sword wielder here. Certainly not the person at the end of it. And is this a secret of Portuguese colonialization? You only had to see a crab or what's it called, the carrax sword, and okay, it's all yours. I'll just walk off over here. You help yourself. Terminals pointing toward the tip, and the large round plates sharpened sufficiently to be used as extra blades in close combat. So not only have you got the long blade, you've got sharpened bits pointing away from you around the hilt to be used in close combat. And hopefully this didn't have to happen too often. Just the look of it would be enough to quell any possible violence and tension. The carrax black swords were painted black. This is a really clever thing. The carrax swords were painted black. Can you hear a song in your mind's ear when I say painted black? To prevent reflected light from betraying their presence on ships. I want to show you the other view of it. There you go, as I go into the next bit. So there you go. Isn't that amazing? So they were painted black to prevent reflected light from betraying their presence on ships, glinting in the distance. Did they paint the whole ship black then, I wonder? As well as to mitigate corrosion caused by salt water, which of course is a constant challenge when you're at sea. The sword was also known as the colonia, which in rude Portuguese means big ball. Sorry if I said that without warning anybody that was coming, but that's what it means, due to the round plates resembling a pair of testicles in combination with the general phallic form of the sword. Oh, I suddenly see what you mean, T-Duck there. Excellent work this morning. That will be banked into the GMP VIP platform. Great stuff, good stuff there this morning. Thank you very much for that. I will return to the Iberian FM phone-in graphics around the screen. And actually, while we are in the picture deck, let me just share with you. Oh, something weird is happening at the back here. Here to also Susan, I said, didn't I, rather than season our conversation this morning, a question on the GMP VIP, which I was just mentioning. I recently had tea with some friends, says this correspondent. Our conversation organically evolved to understand the finer strokes of Portuguese culture. Who doesn't like a fine stroke of Portuguese culture first thing in the morning? We know Lord Gilchrist does. Kindness. How do you reciprocate with Portuguese friends for their kindness shown? Shall I have a go at these and then invite your input as well? How do you reciprocate with Portuguese friends for the kindness shown? You can try, but it's a battle you should expect to lose. Do you reciprocate? Do you reciprocate? Some were told you don't. Well, I think a little gesture is good. A little bit of wine might be quite useful. Always goes down well, doesn't it? Or some sort of special alcohol. But don't expect to win the battle of reciprocation with Portuguese hosts. I don't think they're expecting you to. and there will be, you shouldn't have done that, but thank you very much for the bottle of wine. But you would expect, I think, to be bestowed with great generosity and overwhelmed with Portuguese kindness. My daughter was told, says this correspondent, you come in to help when it is needed. Well, there you go. No better help, no better reciprocation than to give help when it's needed, right? Friendship, then. Are there cultural codes and expectations that guide friendships with Portuguese friends? Great question. Poor service. I don't think this is related to friendship, by the way. Most friends do not carry a complaints book with them, although that might be quite a good idea. Are there methods? Sometimes. Are there methods? Good morning, Frank. Are there methods other than the red book to express dissatisfaction with poor service? You can do that online or offline, the dreaded livros de reclamações. Being a guest, what is culturally appropriate gift to take? It's back to the kindness and reciprocation conversation, really, isn't it? Is taking wine offensive to the host? Depends what the wine is and how much you spent, I guess. One friend was told it is. Well, you just never know, do you? But I think there's no harm in taking a bottle of wine when you're a guest. Is there a norm on the type and size of gift that would mean not outshining the host? You don't outshine the host. I think that's important. Differences. Are there differences in cultural expressions around the above questions in Portugal? I quickly realized I need much, much more diving into the beautiful Portuguese culture I live in, and much, much more participation with Portuguese friends. The best way to integrate is to spend more time with our Portuguese friends. I would love to hear your experiences, Carl Munson. Would it be possible to hear from our Portuguese friends on your GMP show? Absolutely. And I think you can consider that job started, if not done there. So there we go. We can return to those as well this morning. Let's see what else is being said here. Have people been shocked by the phallic sword of Portugal? I wonder. Anna is saying, Bom dia a todos. Today is Zumba training. You sound excited about that. And great, a Portuguese dad joke as well. I will come back to those later on. We might need them after the discussion we're going to have this morning. Bom dia, Gumpers, from James. Feliz dia a todos. Como va a todos? Now, we have a little WhatsApp group for our regular guests and co-hosts here on the Good Morning Portugal show. And I'm putting some of you, I did preview with those wonderful people the nature of the discussion this morning. And I'm just saying to them, the link, if you want to join us this morning to have this conversation with us, let me see, if you want to join us on screen. My multitasking is not brilliant this morning. I definitely did not have, I haven't finished my tea, that's what it is. The link, if you want to join me, actually, other people can do this as well. I probably will put the link on the screen at some point. So if you want to be on in full glory, Technicolor, you can do that. But otherwise, you can call in on 913-590-303. Are you still here, Ernest? And do you want to call in a few minutes' time? Deagle, bon dia, Carl and Gumpers, from a warm, sunny and dry north of Belfast near International Airport. I'm away celebrating my 54th birthday today. Parabéns a você. The magic 20 degrees broken yesterday in Belfast. Bare belly time. Is that how you're celebrating, Deagle? Well, Deagle, our dear friend here in the Gumper community, have a very happy birthday today, my friend. Parabéns a você. And hola, bon dia, everyone. I think our FA Cup celebration, well, not celebration, but just watching the match, those plans have been scuppered. Frank's not going to be around to enjoy that with us, Owen, so we need to rethink that. Jimmy, I gave you one morning. Go in your box. Now be a good boy. I'm trying to do a live stream here. Don't be demanding and needy right now, although that's difficult for you, isn't it? Don't look at me with those eyes. Anyone interested in the FA Cup final this weekend? We can still do it, can't we? What's the plan so far then, Owen and John? Can we call in? Haha, hello and good day to all. Yes, you can, definitely. I think you maybe have only been joking there, Ernest, from LinkedIn this morning, but you definitely can. Sweden, Portugal, this is Andy talking to Anna. My wife loves Zumba. It's still a big thing over here. Look out for the mega Zumba events. They are great fun. Imagine there are quite a few spectators as well, aren't there? You rascals. So yes, I think I have seen a big Zumba event. Who doesn't like a big Zumba first thing in the morning? And Anna will look out for that. Thanks for the tip. Good morning from Honeymoon Always. How you doing? Are you here to take part in this expat, immigrant or foreigner conversation? Portugal, San Francis is in. Feliz terça. And morning call from Shannon as well. And what's this? Hello from agricultural bookage. northern France, 1 hour from Mont Saint Michel. How beautiful! That's LinkedIn user. Although that's the sort of thing Ancient Mariner might ordinarily say. Is that you? FA Cup was massive as a kid. I found out just before the 1977 FA Cup final. Steve Coppell, I think I met him at one of those, meet and greets. Joined Man United from Tranmere. I ditched Man U for Tranmere the Thursday before the final for Tranmere Rovers. Oh, and Ernest is in the Azores, the Azores at San Miguel this morning. Bon dia, I'm here now. Nice one, John. Excellent points you were making last night about the expat immigrant foreigner conversation. Thank you very much. And another in Aguada de Bajo on the same day. What's that? Are we still talking about Zumba events there? Barry's in as well. How you doing, Barry? Still awaiting the elusive Escritura? Of course you are. Hope for good news today. Enjoying the company of our house guest sitter. Have a great day, folks. That's wonderful how that's all concluded or come together there. Love it when a plan comes together. So Deagle's been after that road to Wembley experience, you could say, a Tranmere fan ever since. So glad my 8-year-old head ruled over my heart. Imagine being a Man U supporter all your life. Rain, Carl. What's rain? It's been 13 days since it rained in sunny Belfast. It poured down this morning here. And it has been in parts of Portugal too, with hail and all sorts going on. The northern parts seem very Zumba active. Unfortunately, not in the Algarve, as I've discovered so far. What is it now? What have they moved on to? Spinning or something else? You're back. You're welcome on the show, but get back in your box. Is that just for Jimmy? Yes, sorry. I hope none of our audience thought I was talking to them this morning. Get back in your box and stop looking at me with those eyes. Lovely view from the window this morning. Avalanche clouds pouring over the mountains and sinuous mist hovering above the Lima in the middle distance. Oh, what a lovely way with words you have, John. See you this evening for the Portugal Club. Portugal, check out Sweden, Portugal, check out the big festivals down there. They sometimes have a Zumba event hidden amongst the things going on. Oh, okay, that's a good idea. That they don't promote very well. We need to see that on the Gumper map, do we not? Facebook user, morning. That view from yesterday was incredible. Thanks for posting the photos. Well, I'll do it again now if you like. I think I've already downloaded them. So let's have a look at those photos, shall we? I wonder if Sarah Davey is watching this morning. And if she's into the idea of us teaching her Portuguese, I wonder. We'll find out in due course. It could be hilarious. She might join us tomorrow. I hope so. And the Gumpers teaching Sarah from Spartan FX Portuguese. What could possibly go wrong? The views that are being talked about. Look at this. This is through the beautiful arch of the chapel that looks out over the sea. Obviously, where you can pray for the well-being and safety of sailors and all those who are in the sea here. It's really a beautiful place. Above Salida de Porto, and the chapel restoration is very respectful and beautiful, and it looks like a labor of love up there. And before you get to it, you might just be able to see the top of the cockerel on top of the chapel, where these 2 points nearly meet each other at the neck of the bay here at San Martino de Porto. There's the beachfront of San Martino de Porto slightly to your right. And there's the neck of the bay. You see a dredging ship that's in there at the moment. And on this side, on that track there, it looks like you drop off at the end. But no, as you walk down that track, you get to the chapel, the Capella Salida de Porto, which is absolutely beautiful. Great place to walk to. And as I say, we only popped out for a cup of coffee and a piece of toast. And we ended up there. It was superb. And so it's a pleasure. Thanks for posting the photos. Got many more, actually. I'm so behind with videos and photos that I want to upload. But that's part of, life in Portugal. You will end up with more photographs than you can ever possibly share. I think Michael Pollan, the author, said it best. Eat food, not too much, mostly plants. The key is not to overdo it on a regular basis. That's a good life advice, isn't it? Thank you, Ocean Dweller. And you might want to ask the question that you asked me on this screen as well, Aviva, this morning. Saturated fats cause problems with your cholesterol levels, which can increase your risk of heart disease. I get that, T-Duck. I definitely have heard that. But I think the research around that has changed over time, possibly. That not all fats have been, are equal in the way that the margarine industry first pitched them. You know how some of these things work, that there's a lobby group behind some of these things that we now take as read. So the old wisdom of all things in moderation seems to hold. Absolutely. Old wisdom. Not all old wisdom is good, is it? but much of it is, and that's probably why it becomes old wisdom, right? Because we keep repeating it. Carl, naughty by nature. What? I was up to sword talk this morning. Anyway, we should open up those phone lines. Who wants to? Oh, I think Veronica, American in Portugal, will be joining us on screen as well. Thank you for your message, Bobby, this morning. Thank you, Frank. Okay, interesting. Your plans there. Cheers, Frank. Good morning. And yes, let me make sure then. Has anyone tried to call me yet? No, they haven't. But James has joined me behind the scenes. I'm tempted to play his theme tune, but that's a Monday morning thing. Give us a thumbs up when you're ready to join me on screen, James. Oh, we've got a phone call. We'll go straight to that, and we can bring James on at the same time as well. So I'm gonna just answer this call. Oh no, that was outgoing, not incoming. No, my mistake. I need to let that person. I could get myself in a terrible problem here. I will just say misdial to the person I just called, because they're going to call me back in a minute. I'm going to be trying to get James onto the screen, and then Veronica, and it's going to be horrible and difficult. It's not going to be horrible because James and Veronica are on the screen. It's going to be horrible because there's too many things going on the screen. Relax, Carl. Take a breath. Out for 3. No, in for 3. Out for 5. And bring James onto the screen. Well,
did you miss me?
Yes, it feels like it's been ages.
A day or so.
It's flown by. How are you, James? And tempted by the topic of discussion today, expat, immigrant, or foreign. I know, on a Monday morning, of course, this will have come into our conversation. I know you have a view on this. Do you not have a T-shirt as well to go with this conversation?
Haven't made that one yet. No.
Right, okay. So, what's your thoughts? What comes immediately to mind when you see this? Do you think, oh God, not this again, or do you think, okay, yes, there is something useful to be said, especially in this part of the evolution of migration into Portugal?
Well, yes, I do believe it's a great conversation to have, but not necessarily just specific to this term. It could be. For me, it's about language. I believe that language is very powerful, and the words we say, the words we choose, can have very subtle sometimes, and also sometimes very clear interpretations. So for me, I love the notion of having a conversation about this type of thing, but it's not so much about the conversations tend to go, what's right, what's wrong? This is the right thing to say. This is the wrong thing to say. Oh, only those stupid people use that word, and those stupid people use that word. And to me, a much richer and informative conversation is, why do we use the terms that we use? Yes. Why do we use the term expatriate or expat versus immigrant? And that all boils down to, like so many things, a personal choice. When I look at so one of the things I do when I'm trying to make this choice consciously, mindfully, that's my thing, is I look at a dictionary. What's the dictionary definition of these terms? So I did that to remind myself, because I was reminded.
Thank you.
I'm sorry?
Thank you. That's a really good start.
Yeah. What does the dictionary say these terms mean? And I thought I remembered from doing this before, and it turns out I was correct on this one, that expat, which is short, it's an abbreviation for expatriate, and immigrant are virtually defined exactly the same. I actually copied and pasted them so I could read them directly from Merriam-Webster's dictionary. Expatriate or expat is a person who lives in a foreign country. Okay, that applies to any of us who want to use it.
Yes.
Immigrant, a person who comes to the country to take up permanent residence. Period.
Yeah.
Okay, that would apply to most of us who plan to be here for forever.
Yeah.
What's the difference? They mean the same thing. So then the question becomes, why would I use expat versus immigrant, or vice versa? And for me, this is the piece I wanted to share ultimately, is that there, in my listening and my experience, particularly in the United States, and particularly about immigrants from south of the border, so Mexico on down to South America, is that there's something inferior, something diminishing about the term immigrant. it implies that you're here illegally, or that you're here only because you can't afford to live in your country, so you come to work in this country. Or it implies very subtly those things. It doesn't mean that according to the dictionary, but that's what it implies. So to call someone an immigrant is not quite an insult, but especially if you're referring to someone with darker skin, darker hair, darker eyes south of the border is an immigrant, that tends to mean something other than a Canadian who's an immigrant. And in fact, that bias is statistically researched in the United States to show that there are, at one point, there were more undocumented Canadians in the United States than there were from any other country. And yet it was the people of color from south of the border who were being required to carry identification and being threatened for exportation and all these other things that came with it. And Canadians were not even on the list. They weren't even, people of interest. So for me, I choose immigrant because to me it's accurate. And expat, again, the subtle implication of expat in my listening, and I'm being very specific about that because it's not true for everybody, it's true for me. My listening says if I choose expat, I'm trying to separate myself from the lower identification of immigrant.
Right.
Part of this is my training from coming from especially California in the United States. So why would I use expat? Well, because I want people to know that I'm better than that, whatever that means. I have more money, I have more privilege, I have more opportunity, I have more choices.
Yeah.
Whatever that term may mean, that's what it implies to me. It doesn't say directly. I don't look at someone who says, oh, I'm an expat and go, oh, you go away. I just go, oh, interesting choice of word. I wonder why. And then I assume that means they live here. I'm planning to live in a different country permanently. For me, there's less risk for me to use the term immigrant, of being applied as a negative thing. And if I claim it as something that I want to normalize, then that's the one thing I control is me. I can control how I represent myself. So I choose immigrant.
Thank you for making that, and thank you for being very clear to use the two words for me, because I think that's very, very. You underlined that and put it in bold in the conversation, didn't you? And that's that's what I've come to expect from you. That's your choice, your life choice, your position on the matter, and I'm not sure you're using it. I think some people do make their choice of word, and the way they're highlighting it and emboldening it is to make other people wrong. I get no sense of that with you, James, on this matter. And I think
thank you.
I'm done here. My work is done. And I think that's a really important distinction in the conversation that is had around this, and it can end in bitterness and acrimony and division. And it's so unnecessary, and it's so ironic as well, isn't it? There's such an irony to people falling out, but who might benefit from falling in, as it were, or feeling closer to people as strangers in a foreign land. And what happens? They come and have a very emotional and angry conversation about a word, and find themselves somewhat self-excluded or excluded by others on the basis of not backing down or not being able to see another side of a conversation. There's a strange poetry to that, to me.
I just had a flash of immigrants fighting in the street over which term was the right term in a foreign country.
Right. I mean, that's exactly what I'm talking about. Can you imagine? And that's why I have a special angle or emphasis that I want to have around this conversation this morning. Is what do our hosts think about this? I'm not sure we go there I've not seen that very often. I do see people chipping in, Portuguese people chipping in with their views on it, and that's what I'm really interested in, especially as part of the conversation. And apparently,
me too.
We found out last night. Do you know what's even funnier? Said one of our correspondents on this. The term expatriados, which is the equivalent to expats, has a huge negative connotation in Portuguese. So,
Interesting.
yes, and we didn't know that, did we? Until we started having a conversation about it.
Well,
And
there is another definition to it, another part to it, which is someone who has intentionally removed themselves from the place they came from. I'm
Yeah.
no longer that. I am leaving that behind me, which is got a little different meaning than simply someone who's living in a foreign country. So
Yes.
expatriate has that sort of the possibility of a misinterpretation depending on what you mean.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you for that as well. So, immigrant is a better use of the language. We'll bring Veronica on in just a moment. But I
Not the
know
best. It's the one I use.
what's
Stop
that?
it. Stop polarizing me.
Did I do that, or is that Portuguese doing that?
You said the best immigrant. So immigrant is the best.
No, this is what Portuguese is saying. Immigrant is a
Oh,
better
okay.
use of the language. No, certainly not. I
You're
only
reading.
say
Got it.
I only say things like that when I'm trying to stir up trouble.
That's right. Which I thought is what you were trying to do.
No, certainly not. That's Portuguese. However, when an English lord gives you his view on something, I mean, that's that's the power, has the power of 10 men, possibly, doesn't it? He also says that sword looks phallic, and he needs to catch up a bit because that's exactly what we said. You made a very good comment, actually, just whizzing back to the sword and the Age of Discovery. What were you
Yes.
saying? An Age of Discovery that has a sword. As part of it is always interesting. He said something along those lines. Oh yeah, I just love an age of
led by a sword. Yeah.
that's led by a sword. Yes, we're here to discover you. Take what you want. Okay. Right. Which again is all part of this conversation. I'm making light of that, of sort of colonial arrival. But obviously there's a dim and dark side to that too, which we probably won't go in today. But I'm not afraid of having a conversation. It's just that this one is probably quite complex enough to have.
Yes.
Eagle Carl, I'm in a place called Dunadry. Anyway, he's in a small village near the international airport called Dunadry. I'm going to go
I
with.
would call it Dunadry.
Yeah, okay, good. Bom dia, Pellegrinos, says Ubi, who often has pithy and interesting things to say, and I look forward to those. Now, João de Nort, Sarah's here. She was a Facebook user. Good one. You have to give Facebook permission to expose you, Sarah. I queried why some object to the term expat and read that detractors attribute a sense of superiority to the term. And I think you've touched on that really, James, haven't you? I was thinking the same thing as James, but wasn't sure how to verbalize it. I guess that's why Monday is my favorite day. And maybe
yes.
maybe Tuesday as well now then. Going back briefly to olive oil, saturated fats and foods and so on, France has the 14th highest life expectancy, higher than Portugal, UK, US, and even Canada. Even Canada! I recently decided to start a similar diet based on 3 French food groups: wine, cheese, and cigarettes. All right. Immigrant is a better use of the language, says Portuguese. And it's those sort of conversations that inflame Facebook groups, Andrew. You may ring it.
Better and best and worst and good, bad, win, lose, all that.
And you shouldn't say that.
Yes.
You should say this. That really works well.
I try to remember to say, in my opinion, or in my experience, or
That's
to
right.
my
Don't say
listening.
Yeah, and don't say in my humble opinion, because usually it's not true.
Yeah, usually then it's not.
It's usually a bit of sarcasm, isn't it? I disagree with that. Do you know what I tend to say at home when I'm having fun at home? In my not very humble opinion, I might start a conversation with that. Doesn't tend to go very well, of course. I disagree with the characterization as it diminishes the experience of those not as privileged as most of us. And that there is an important angle on being privileged, isn't there? And wanting to seem less privileged than you are, because that's the thing as well. People, there is an expat guilt, isn't there? That's a term: expat guilt, expat shame. And again, I'm sure James would agree with me here. I take a risk saying that, of course, but talking about it is probably the best treatment for expat guilt or expat shame, because I do see it coming out as you should behavior and people feeling uncomfortable about something, and it comes out somewhere else as a bold assertion and sometimes a slightly uncomfortable one. So thank you for that, John. Migration has happened for millennia. There's nothing wrong with migratory behaviors. Well, there can be, can't there? Like, maybe let's be clear here that, I mean, migrants, foreigners and immigrants can be a-holes as well, like everyone in any area of life.
Can you say that about all humans? I mean,
Quite.
some can be. So it doesn't
Exactly.
matter whether they're moving or staying still. Some humans
Yes.
are a-holes and some are brilliant, wonderful people,
Yes.
in my humble opinion.
Well, yes, thank you for that erudite insertion. Who doesn't like one of those first thing in the morning? John saying we need to be careful of claiming equivalency. We are all immigrants when most of us are quite privileged. And that I think that's a fair comment about our...
Well, again, that's yeah. Okay, I misread it. I'm starting to get reaction to the whole polarization debate thing. Yes,
Yes.
absolutely.
Yeah. And again, let's talk about it. This is if I can just, this is a good way. This is almost a cue to take a breath if we are getting activated or triggered. What I'm endeavoring to do here is start something called the Portugal Immigrant Network. And the emphasis here is us hoping to represent individuals and national identities of foreigners coming into Portugal. Our intention is to support people enjoy their new life in Portugal. So that's one side of it, so that they can integrate. This is the other side of it, successfully and ultimately make a positive impact, a sensitive and appropriate impact on the new culture into which we're coming. Now, James, the thing is, to me, there is quite an intense migration going on at the moment. And again, talking about it is good, because otherwise we're into those other conversations, aren't we? Like gentrification, prices going up. You people are doing this to those people. Let's find out if that's true. And if it is true, what can we do about it? And to me, that's going to be the most enlightened approach to us having a good time here, and making sure, we are going to have an impact. You can't, human beings, again, all human beings are impactful creatures. I remember reading something from an environmental book. A man talks to a tree. He's actually hugging this tree and he's crying and saying, why are we such a burden to nature? And apparently the tree said back to this guy, it's just what you humans do. We have an impact. We are an impactful species. So if we can accept that rather than live in the guilt and shame of it, which doesn't really help, I think as soon as we can own the fact that we are going to have an impact, your money, your taking a rental, buying a house, being in the supermarket, spending money, not spending money, all of those things have an impact. And if we can be mindful and conscious that that is the case, then we can manage what sort of impact it might have, is what I would say.
And for me, as usual, it's not a surprise. It's all about mindfulness. It's about making conscious choices and why we make those choices. That's why I think this conversation about the terminology is more informative if we're talking about why do I use that term?
Yeah.
That's a personal choice. I use it. There's no right or wrong answer to that question, but there is an explanation that might help the listener to understand why someone would use that term versus that term.
Yep.
To me, that's constructive. So it's not even the use. It's not even which term do you use. To me, it's why do I use the terms I use? Why do I use the language that I use?
Yeah. Well said. Yes. And we'll come to Veronica in just a moment after a couple more comments. Second part of John's comment, our immigrant status is not immediate and personal. It's a bit pretentious to try and say, I'm just like you, we are all the same. And again, I think there is an understandable aspect of wanting to say, I'm just like you, we're all the same, because in some senses we are, but pretending, and this is, I know that this is a massive shortcoming, if you like, in the work so far of the Portugal Immigrant Network. Here we are navel gazing on a Tuesday morning about these words, whilst fellow immigrants are breaking their backs in the field or getting peed on with rain, picking vegetables out of the, talking about equivalency. There is no equivalency in the plight of different, when I give a sort of a very caricatured contrast like that. We do not have those people in our community, and that's part of what the Portugal Immigrant Network is about: is to hear the voices of those communities. There's a top 20 chart. If you look at the page, the Portugal Immigrant Network page on the Good Morning Portugal website, you'll see the top 20 of migration. The different nationalities that come in. We cover very few of them. We are sort of pale and stale, if you like. We could do with the enrichment of other people in this community. So I welcome that. And that's my invitation. Part of this is my invitation that we do broaden our horizons and perspectives on this. It's all part of it. And I do recognize our shortcomings at the moment. And what a festival that will be, James, if we had those 20 nationalities for a weekend under one big top, doing their music and cooking their food. I think that'd be an amazing event.
Woohoo!
He's up for it. You can tell.
Did you see my shaking? No, yes, I'm just trying to make a joke and I'm falling quickly, so never mind.
Expat sounds like a bloated and sweaty English person in the Costa Brava.
And that's the thing.
That's not helpful.
Why language is so important. Anytime you have terms that can have multiple meanings and misinterpretations,
yes,
you can have argument and debate and conflict because everybody has a different idea of what it means. So that's not what's important, the word itself. What's important is, why do I use that word?
Yeah.
To me, that's awareness raising. That if I don't know, that would be a good thing to look at. Why do I use that one instead of that one?
Yes,
interesting.
That's right.
What do I learn about myself?
And if I am bloated and sweaty, I could think I could be more mindful about that. I could put a shirt on, couldn't I, when I go into a cafe?
Yes.
For example,
we can always be more mindful. Yes.
He does correct this. I think he is being a little bit inflammatory this morning, Lord Gilchrist. He's using his lordly privilege here, lording it over us with his views. I do not like the term expat, says Tabitha, because I am not a patriot. I'm a foreigner or an immigrant or just a bloody nuisance.
I think a lot of us can resonate to that last one.
That's right. Yes, we're doing our best. My aha moment was, do I call myself something different than what I call other people in the same situation? That's a good view on it, isn't it? And if so, why am I making that differentiation? Very good, Marcus. Great to have you here, PT Country Bear. Expats, listen to him. Expats probably won't learn the language or fully integrate. But I'm stereotyping. Oh, really? We hadn't noticed so far, had we?
So easy to do. Just say everyone.
Yeah, Lord
everyone is.
Expat to me has the connotation of voluntary autonomy and decision making, not forced, coerced, or involuntary. I'd go with that for sure. Yes. Very good, very good.
You're not alone on that one.
No, that's right, and it puts most of us into that bracket. In that case, in the Açores, people would associate expatriados to the Portuguese descents expelled from the US to Portugal, even though some of them don't know the language or ever lived here. So there we have the expatriados. And a great insight from Antonio. So looking forward to more of what you've got to say about this, Antonio, as we welcome onto the screen Veronica, the American in Portugal.
Good morning.
Hola, Veronica.
Hola. How are you, James? How are you?
I'm
Another
terrific,
California person. Yay.
How are you, Veronica?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on, kind of impromptu. I loved the conversation last night.
It was good,
Carl's got this great group of bloggers and guests, and we were all talking about this, and it's so cool to see all the different opinions and realize one word can be such a huge trigger.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because one word can be interpreted a million different ways.
Yeah, but we interpret it based on our own life experiences, right? So you mentioned
absolutely.
California.
Through our filters.
Yeah, and I had to dig in and go, why do I have a negative or a positive connotation with this? Why are people so triggered? Am I triggering them when I'm using the word? Like, there's so much in this little tiny question that you kind of go, wow, do I want to be the person that Carl says it so nicely. He says, I open my mind and I go, okay, why, and we can have three different choices, right? We can just go, oh, that person is a nutcase and hit delete when they're trolling our sites. And, sometimes you're in the mood where you're like, oh my gosh, I put like 100 hours into this video. You watched it for 10 seconds, clearly didn't watch the end. And now you're trolling and saying negative stuff. So it's our choice to say, I'm going to delete and just not have that in my space today. Or we're going to choose to engage and go, well, you kind of suck. Or we're going to
yes.
Or we're going to go, why is this a trigger? Why, wow, I never thought about this before. Is this, to James' point, am I not being mindful? Is there something that I'm doing that I'm not even aware of? And do
Yeah.
I want to change that and fix that and be more kind and inclusive? I think there's just, this is such a huge conversation in life in itself, right?
And what are your
There's that
immediate
notice,
thoughts?
choose, and act thing again and again and again. Notice, you have to notice before you can make a choice, and then you take the action. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah.
So what? Thank you for your elaboration. Anna's going to be joining us soon as well. After we've had a chance to talk to you and some of your most immediate reflections or ideas on this matter, Veronica. And I also want to ask you: you're in what could be described as a hotspot, aren't you, of a migratory activity? The Algarve, especially, has these issues coming up because there's a high concentration of people coming into the area. It's a tourist area. And I think it's fair to say, isn't it? There's an increasing American population that's having an impact on property purchase and prices and so on. So there's something to be managed here. So would you agree with me that it is good to have a conversation? And if you do agree with that, is there a conversation going on among or between or that includes both the incoming population and local people? Do you see any evidence of that at all?
Not in relation to just the word, but into immigration as a whole. And even in our chat last night, I got in trouble for saying, well, if someone is saying they're not an immigrant, they need to look at the history of America, because unless you're a Native American, you came from somewhere. And then some guy said, don't put us all in a box. Not everybody's an immigrant, and I'm like, wow, okay, so that word's even a trigger. So
Yes.
It's really interesting. So in relation to it here, it's not specifically about the word, but absolutely with my Portuguese neighbors and other people who's coming in. Here we have probably more of the Dutch than the British. The Dutch and Italians, I think, because it's so close to the border, and of course, Spanish day trippers. And I think that the conversation is different with that versus the British population. So I think maybe with the British population, there's a different connotation of the word versus like the Americans versus the Portuguese. And I loved how we also said, bringing it back to the Portuguese to answer your question, is they're looking at expatrios as a negative, this was a negative thing. So when someone is on our sites and they're saying, hey, you're not an immigrant, you're an expat, are they saying that because they've had a bad experience or because they consider you something negative? And I don't think we know anything until we ask the why, because every single one of us is a different program based on our life experiences and how our parents raised us. So for me personally, I see immigrant, I see almost as permanent, versus expat, I see as something where I haven't made my final decision. I don't have to be 100%, I'm here forever. Yes, I bought a house, but still having that freedom to go, wow, what if I do decide to move to Spain or Germany or Croatia or Colombia? There's a sense of immigration to permanence in my mind.
Yeah.
Do you see that?
Totally do. I totally do. Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for that. At this point, I'm going to bring Anna into the conversation as well with a European perspective. You are here to give us a thumbs up if you want to be brought onto the screen, Anna, or if you're just listening in. Yes, she does. Okay, so give her I'm just checking, Anna, because, that can be awkward if somebody's just gone back to watch and then you bring them on.
Yeah, okay. Hi. Nice to meet you.
Of the Portuguese immersion experience, you've seen her on the screen previously, and doing some amazing work to bring about. I mean, that's what the Portuguese immersion experience is about, isn't it? Is to bring about and accelerate integration locally. What's your view on this, Anna?
Well, we talked about that a couple of weeks ago. I told you that I had indeed put one of my projects, I think, online on Facebook with the mentioning, and it was also on my site, like, are you an expat in Portugal?
Oh, yes.
It's just, you have to address your public, the people that you are aiming for. And it just blew up in my face on Facebook. I mean, I had very negative reactions, also very supportive reactions of expats, immigrants, foreigners that just stood by me and said, listen, this is a minefield. be careful which word you use. But okay, then I thought, okay, let's make a poll, which was an even worse idea. Let's make a poll on Facebook. Which word do you prefer? And if it's none of the above, then maybe we should just invent a new word, like something that doesn't have any connotation to anyone, and just, make it my idea was, let's make this fun and maybe just try to find a fun new word.
What were you thinking? What were you thinking?
I don't know. Yeah, indeed. What was I thinking? So that was, it went, well, viral is an easy word, but it went all over the place. Yeah.
Wow.
So I was really happy. I didn't know, I hesitated the whole time because apparently a poll, first time I did a poll on Facebook, apparently a poll and last. It stays on Facebook for, I don't know, 7 days, something like that. So I was hesitating. Okay, should I take it off? But then on the other hand, I thought, no, maybe this discussion needs to be had. I mean, we need to talk about this. So, but every day things got worse and then better. So I was really happy when the week was over. And
I'm so sorry to hear
thing
this. Yes.
Yeah, and the conclusion is there is no conclusion. Blah. So no one,
Well,
no
thank you
one,
for that.
no one really suggested a new word. I wanted to make it fun, funny, fun. No one really. Well, there were some funny answers, like escapees. That could be a word because
Yeah,
everyone was
people used to that.
escaping.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that was then again with the connotation of happy to be out of the UK, out of America, whatever. That was the only one, I think, that is worth mentioning. And all the others were just like, why immigrant? Why? And I think it's exactly what you've been saying. The problem is also we all come from different places. And I come from Belgium, for example. In Belgium, immigrant and foreigner are very negative words.
Are they?
Yeah. So if it's the words that extreme right uses to talk about a certain group of people, even
Right.
though those people are mostly born and raised in Belgium. So it's not a word you want to put into your mouth. So that's why I think automatically, without really thinking of it, I use the word expat because that has a positive connotation. But then apparently it doesn't everywhere.
Absolutely right. And the
Yeah.
conversation continues. Let's bring in a few more comments. And if you want to jump in on any of these, please do so. We've got Veronica here. We've got Anna. We've got James. And I think others might join us too as well. So we've got, I was going to say,
I wonder if we can turn that conversation and say why. Like when you do that poll, then do another poll and say, this was so polarizing. Can you guys answer why? Why? Like, what was yours? And to your point, it's because you're saying, well, in my country, the right refers to this word as a negative. So you're basically calling me like a slang negative word. And then some people are like, I don't care. That whole, you can call
that
me
was
want,
very common. Yeah, that was a very common reaction also. Like, how can you, like, I also got, which is, exactly what I didn't want to happen, but I also got lots of comments from people saying, why are you raising this subject? It's horrible. It's been a problem ever. Yeah. So people were also
Why are you trying to be funny?
How do you fix it if you can't have a discussion about it?
Absolutely.
Yeah, no, they went, this is
can't talk about it.
like boring, and why are you raising the subject?
Boring.
Like,
read it, move along. That's always my point. If you find something boring, why are you commenting?
Well, that's right.
It's not boring to you.
I found a new Facebook comment I can use. Why are you making me talk about this?
That was exactly the reaction of many people.
Really?
So
wow.
I just, I mean,
so it needs to be talked about.
People.
Well, yes, well said, Veronica. If it's causing a problem, it perhaps needs to be talked about. Well said.
Yeah.
And maybe not everybody's ready.
Yeah, it's
right.
True.
So somebody that's ready can join the discussion. And if you're not ready, you don't have to join because it's a choice. And why are you choosing to put pain on yourself if it's painful to you or if it's angry to you? Why are you choosing to engage because what you're doing is you're sharing that pain. So share it and
Let's
figure
go
out
to
what
the
that pain point
psychotherapist.
is.
Let's go to the psychotherapist for this answer. Why do people cause themselves intentional pain, James?
There you go. There you go. Why?
It's like, wait, we've done well over 50 episodes on Monday mornings that just basically talks about this.
All right, let's
yes.
move on.
And do you do it on social media because it's safer? Like maybe if I came in to see you,
Yeah.
I wouldn't be able to say, I'm so hurt and this triggered me. And let's talk about why this is a trigger for me. But I can go on social media and go, you suck. And then,
Yes.
and then,
Well,
and then there's
anonymity
something
is
to, okay, I feel good about
Absolutely.
this without having to
Absolutely.
talk about it.
Yeah.
we can hide behind anonymity. People don't know us. They just see our reaction. And there's the culture of it. The culture of social media is just say whatever that you want. And it doesn't matter. And yet, we're in polite company. It does matter. If we're face to face, it matters how we say something and what we say. Online, who cares? So there can be that attitude as well.
All right, let me
clearly
please.
they care. The poll.
Let me add some of the wonderful comments that are coming in. While we may love Portugal and tend to stay, the fact remains that we still have a choice to leave if we wish, and that's pivotal, isn't it? But I guess, does that necessarily need to change the word? Therefore, saying we're all the same is a bit pretentious, don't you think? I would agree with you, but I'm going to stop commenting.
Well, and that gets to the why that we're talking
That's the
about, which is
why. Can they
why
leave
it's
or
so
not leave? Is it
important.
pretentious?
Because to say that it means something doesn't mean that means that to everyone, as we've just defined. So and when I say I'm an immigrant, I'm not saying I'm just like everyone.
Yeah.
I'm saying this is how I identify. Like I identify as a male. I identify as a psychotherapist. There's things about me that I identify with, which is how I label myself. That I'm not requiring you to do the same. And I'm not
I feel
saying
a pronoun
everybody,
conversation coming up.
Hold on.
Yes.
Like I said before, we do need to boundary this conversation before we go into pronouns and the other thing. And social media and X, Y, and Z. Let's keep it on expat, immigrant, and foreigner, because we were already in enough trouble with that potentially. And I did say to the three of you, please jump in, but please don't now, because we got into one comment and we then we stopped. Don't jump in just yet. And then after I've got through a few comments that have been coming in from our audience, we'll bring John on as well. Geralda Nort is here. So Stephen Wells, the difference I hear between the two definitions is permanence. There you go. So another sort of tick for that box. Expat does not mention permanent living, thus suggesting a temporary opportunistic living. To me, possibly Sarah, an expat is usually a wealthier professional. They are more likely to be abroad on a visa sponsored by an employer. An immigrant is everyone else who has come to live and work in a foreign country. They're both foreigners, not liking the word expat. It's just people projecting their jealousy of not liking the word expat is just people projecting their jealousy of wealthy professionals. In my opinion, thank you for that. That would be, says Antonio after Stephen Wells, the most common definition. And this conversation, Tony Bryant, I thought you might pop up and have a thing or two to say about this. He used to come up in Hong Kong all the time. My personal immigrant position: marry a local, adopt a dog, learn the language, pay the taxes, eat the food, drink the wine, make local friends. This needs to be a t-shirt, Portuglish. Make non-local friends, explore the country and history. Now there is a good
well done, Andy.
Outcome. Well done. Yes, you saved yourself from all that earlier stereotype.
Living that.
A lot of my Portuguese mates are proud of their foreign connections, whether they're from other countries or they have relations they're also proud if coming from different parts of Portugal. Yeah, and we love that about Portuguese people, don't we? The Portuguese flag. And I realized the other day that when I see my fellow countrymen, the Brits, flying the Union flag, I'm not quite as charmed by it as I am by Portuguese people. I think this may be a point to come in, because I think Veronica's feeling this as well. We see Portuguese people flying Portuguese flags and think, oh, that's really great. They're so patriotic. Love this. I want to be part of that. Where can I get a Portuguese flag? Then we see people flying the Union Jack or the Star Spangled Banner, and we have a slightly different reaction to that. Do we, Veronica?
Yeah, I'm offended by that because.
Are you offended by it?
I am
Oh,
because
good.
they are gracious here. to allow us to be here. And we had one of our biggest in our group, we had a Trumper, and he kind of got marginalized because he's so divisive and I'm right and you're all wrong. And, we try to listen to the why. There is no why. It's a why, because I was told that on the media, right? And he said, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to buy a huge American flag and I'm going to plant this huge American flag across, my property in our town. And we all said, if you do that, we will take it down, because that's like saying, I think you've chosen to come to their country and they're gracious, kind people. We are new to their country. Like, I was the first American in this town that I'm aware of. And now there's about 40, 50, 60 of us. And then you're going to plant this flag. Like, now we've taken it over. Like, do you want to piss them off? Like, what is your goal? And his goal really was behind it to show, I'm American, I'm great, and I'm here, and
Wow.
and a lot of people are now leaving America because they're leaving there. When I first started doing my shows and I was talking about Portugal and all the benefits and lovely things about Portugal, is I would always say, don't move. Oh, it was Ray that first said it, and then I kept typing it. He says, I didn't move here because I was leaving there. He says, I moved here because I wanted to live here. And
Well,
so again,
there's another
getting back to your why, are you running from something? And clearly he's running from something and trying to bring, I'm better than all of you and I'm here and I'm great. And that was his kind of peacock identity everywhere he went. And we just thought, wow, that's really like in your face.
That's a very interesting little new facet, peacocking as expat behavior abroad, peacocking. And I'm not bringing him on because of that. This is not in any way meant to be a connection, Joel de Noort, but I want to bring you on this morning. Hey, John.
Hello.
Hi, John.
Hi, John. And I don't know if you want to catch up with us a little bit here, John, and share what's on your mind. But that's certainly interesting, isn't it? That the Portuguese people might see a bunch of American people wrestling over a flag in somebody's front garden. What sort of impression is that going to create? John, good morning.
Good morning. I just want to put my 2 cents worth out there in regards to this conversation. We did have some good back and forth on points of view last night, but let's keep it on the expat discussion as opposed to right versus left, if we will, because it seems like there's a little bit of a tendency to characterize the right as being bad or evil, and it's really on both sides. It should be more centrist, I think.
Well, fair enough. And actually, Tony Bryant sent me a very interesting meme about how the center. Funny, I mean, this shouldn't happen in physics, should it? The center has moved, hasn't it? And it's called the center for a reason, isn't it? But anyway, like as you say, John, you're suggesting we might not go there. I went there immediately, and it is understandable, I think, why people are drawn towards their politics and then become quite uneasy about it. Okay,
basically,
sticking with
there's a-holes on both sides.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah,
well,
I don't think you're quantifying somebody as an a-hole or not. You're saying this side feels this way, and I personally disagree with that. Like to Anna when she was saying that it was the right that was making immigrant negative. That's just a statement. That's what they used and she wasn't saying they're good or bad. She's saying that was how they vilified people in a specific political setting, and so that's the why people are triggered by it.
Mm-hmm. Okay, well, fair enough. But let's do that. I think that's a good suggestion. I think that's a good serving suggestion for the conversation, John. To stay, because I have seen this time and time again. When the virtue signaling part of which word should we use gets tied up with political allegiances, then it does tend to become an unholy mess in the Facebook groups, and maybe that's part of what Anna experienced. I don't know if it got to that
in a very big way.
There was some, of course. Yeah, you're talking about white privilege all of a sudden.
Okay.
And, yeah, so it went everywhere.
You made so many new friends. Was that a kind of integration immersion thing that you had in mind there?
I don't know what I was thinking. Well, I know what I'm thinking now. Never again. So that question is not going into a poll again.
Well, okay.
Or maybe it should. I don't know. But then I need to find
John, I thank you for your reminder on that. You know, and let's sort of keep it
Yeah, for sure.
particular
I
context.
agree that we're trying to create a safe space and a happy space and a we're here now space. And how do we do that? And what's the best way? So we need all these elements.
How do we become reflective and have our impact be a positive and useful one as a reminder of the context of the conversation? So I mean, I could ask each of the four of you that particular question. John, our new arrival into the conversation here. I mean, presumably you would agree it's important to have the conversations and to have the conversations with our hosts. Are you finding that where you live, your interactions? I know you're fairly new to the country, but are you finding that this is a conversation you might be having with our hosts, with your new Portuguese friends and neighbours?
Well, one of the things I was just remarking to somebody at this birthday party yesterday was a real sense of freedom or freeing in conversations and friends, because we all have different backgrounds, we all have different points of view, yet we're all in a common experience, and we're able to kind of put that aside and just be friends and just be kind and just be together and get to know one another as people, and leave all the politics and all that kind of stuff behind. You still have points of view on issues and topics and things, but the fundamental or focus is that of community and friendship, and rather than, if you have this opinion, I can't be your friend, or we can't have a discussion, or that sort of thing. So I found it very freeing to leave all that behind and not have to be paying attention to that every day.
Until you discover that sometimes it does break out in Facebook groups here, or
until the guy next to you puts a 20-foot flag in front of your house.
Yeah, but some of the I think we've discussed a little bit of it already, but this sense of I'm not going to use the term white privilege. I'm going to use the term privilege, because I do not believe it's an issue of color. People can be privileged and be brown, purple, or whatever. But the fact of the matter is that we do have a different experience than those that may be here from Ukraine or here from Morocco or whatever. That they're here not necessarily by choice, by circumstance, by situation, whereas we're here by choice and by personal preference, that kind of thing. And it might be permanent in our point of view or in our opinion, but the fact remains that we still could buy a ticket and go on holiday back to the States or whatever. But the other point I wanted to make just now is that this sense of...
Before you go there, I think we need to say goodbye to Anna. So thank you, Anna, for your wonderful contributions. And there is a counselling service available for anyone who's had a bad experience of having this conversation. A counselling service will be available after the show. Thank you, Anna.
Thank you very much. I just wanted to say one more thing. I think the main thing, and the thing that we might be missing here, is the Portuguese point of view and standpoint on this. Because if Portuguese I don't know if Portuguese would be offended by a flag, because you think as an American and you look at the American flag and go, oh my God, why is that necessary? I would have the same reaction, but maybe the Portuguese don't see it that way. I don't know, because for Portuguese, being like a patriot, they are so in love with their country. So I think they might understand that point of view from Expat. Okay, I'm off. I just read the comments.
He's off too.
Thrown off now. But I think maybe the Portuguese need to decide not decide, but maybe we are missing a point here.
You're absolutely right.
How do they see us?
And it is part of the invitation here. But we do have Portuguese friends here. I'm very proud of that. We do have Portuguese friends in our community. Nuno is one of them, and saying the key to treating people as people, the key is treating people as people, no matter how we name them. It's just a convenience in the first place, isn't it?
Amen
Anna,
to that.
Thank you so much. And thank you for that point. Appreciate it. Back to John then. Cheers. Bye for now, Anna. Ciao, ciao.
Yeah, the next point I was going to say, and I'll shut up then, is this sense of being an immigrant, or at one point being an immigrant, or whatever, that changes over time, doesn't it? So I'm thinking in terms of origins and where we come from, and what we hold as part of our own personal history. And I would not claim myself to be an immigrant now because of my privileged situation. But in my family background, we were immigrants at one point. I was telling the story last night of, my family has the unique, ability to be able to actually trace our family tree back into the 1600s. And our ancestor was a guy named Nicholas Byram, who was actually kidnapped and sold into slavery into to Dominica. And after he escaped, he went up to the Plymouth colony up in Massachusetts in about 1660. So, he was certainly, it wasn't his choice to be in that situation. But he eventually made his way to a place where he could live a new life. And, things changed in that very much since that situation. So, whereas I could complain or say, oh gosh, this is a terrible situation, which it was at the time. But, with 400 years of perspective, our situation now is quite different. So the point is, things change.
They do. They so do, don't they? And in our own lifetimes, and then maybe in the sort of generations after us, that there will be change there. I recently became aware that I don't think I'm ever going to be accepted, partly because of the amount of work I'm prepared to do with the language, possibly. But I don't think first generation integration it's too much to ask for in a way. And it's quite good to accept, I think, that you will be a foreigner for quite a long time, and your children might make a better go of it. And these things do take time. But then when you look back over history, it looks like they were quite quick. Oh, I think somebody said this about parenting. A day seems a long time, but life is very short. So while you're experiencing it day to day, it seems to go. It can feel like it's taking forever, but then when you look back and your children are grown up, it's just disappeared in an instant. And maybe immigration is like that as well. And maybe the pain is felt in these day-to-day interactions and difficulties. But no reason why we shouldn't be having this conversation. And there are some great points coming in as well. Thank you, John, for being here. Thank you for your input there.
But we do need to have the conversation if it's triggering so many people, right?
Well, absolutely
so
right.
Because to John or Joao's point, that's such interesting history.
Yes.
That word brings up his whole history and how he got to where he is today. And
Yes.
so with him, he's associating, wow, somebody like enslaved somebody and brought them. Oh, that's like so interesting and so unique. But everybody's life experience is so different. And then this word triggers every little thing, being from Southern California. Immigrants can raise the question of they're taking our jobs or whatever, the common perception is, or what media puts out, right? Sorry, James.
I just said it gets politicized. It becomes for getting elected or reelected.
But why is it politicized? And we have to look at why. Why are we allowing ourselves to allow a talking head to tell us what to do or think and divide us all when we're all just living these great little experiences? And why can't we have a happy, lovely experience and go with the positive and then talk to other people and go, okay, well, what's hurtful to you, or what is bringing this pain to you, and how do we alleviate that and just be friends and happy and love where we're at? And then I want to make one quick point and I know everybody knows this, but you get back what you give out, right? So I notice when I walk around and smile at people and they wave back and they say hello, it changes people's face. Like I've seen little grumpy people walk around and you give them a big smile and then they kind of go, oh, and they smile, and you see them down the street smiling at someone else. It's the same thing with integrating in Portugal. I got super lucky. I have the best neighbor in the whole world. Hello, Anna. I say that all the time, but she was a scooper and just scooped me in. And here I was alone. And so my neighbor is very important to me. And I became part of an immediate Portuguese family. And so I had that good experience to start with where someone else might have a negative experience. So it made it so I was able to go around in my little bubble going, oh my gosh, I love the Portuguese. They're so great. They're so helpful. She invited me over to dinner at Christmas. Like, who does that to their most private family gatherings and getting all these lovely, lovely experiences? But if you walked in and your neighbor was a jerk, you know, you're going to go like, oh man, these Portuguese people don't like us. And then you'll be in your shell, not going around with the big smile, trying to meet everybody. So it's such a great way to share and say, and a reminder that words are not everything, but they are. So it's really important that we look at that trigger and get past it, not past it. That sounds bad, but look at it and kind of.
You make a great point, Veronica, and I wanted to mention this earlier on. You said something like, I'm triggered. Why is that? And that is an almighty step, isn't it, in any of this? Because some people, I think, are getting triggered by it and not asking the question why. They are doing what James was talking about, which is doubling down on Facebook and taking their emotional reaction as a justification for their position, and then coming out with more to justify what they think rather than internalizing it. And I think that's a really that's why we have Mindful Migration Monday, because this is a really important part of this whole conversation. Is like, ow, that is my offense, that is my hurt about this. What caused that? And there is that moment, isn't it, where you have a choice to sort of pause and go, it's actually me that's hurt here by this. Why is that? How did that occur? Or those people are jerks, and you know, the ones who hurt me are jerks, and I'm going to go after them now and show them how wrong they are and how bad they are for making me feel upset. And I do value our community for its ability to perhaps sometimes stop and say, it's me that's hurt here. The offense is mine, and what am I going to do about it? What can it teach me? If you like, which is what I think we do with James every Monday morning. A few more comments. I'll come back to the three of you because I'm especially interested with news headlines like 650,000 foreign workers in Portugal, how we do manage this, how we do reach out, how we do make more Portuguese friends, how we even represent ourselves to government. Bairandi says, none of the words bother me. Call me anything you like, but don't call me late for my prato do dia. Perhaps the most important bit of advice this morning. And again, the words, the triggering, the change of culture. Good morning. I am identifying as a gypsy. You can understand why she says that. You know, if you look at the movie and some of the more, you know, some of the cultural associations with the word gypsy can be very positive and romantic. And then you walk into a culture where there's possibly a problem with the word gypsy and the gypsy community, then yeah, as Sue says here, but I heard the word is regarded as offensive to some. So, or difficult would be another word you could say. And again, conversation is the key here, Suze, rather than clamming up, shutting down, and never mentioning it again. All right. Here's
That's a whole nother show.
Here's a simple word, because.
Yes.
If you're going to use a label, I call myself a gypsy because.
Yes.
And now I'm explaining to you what my personal choice is about that label. So if you think gypsy means something bad, but I give you my because it means something good to me, then you have the opportunity to shift your perspective about who I am using that label. But it's more complex. It requires a willingness to engage a conversation as opposed to simply throw a label on something.
Quite. And you might work with the social feedback, mightn't you? Like every time, as Portuguese says here, I love my MAGA red hat. Now, the social feedback for this might cause him to stop wearing it, certainly at some parties. Like, yeah, he loves it because it's red and the graphics are nice, but there's a massive cultural association with this. And there are times when we might want to just modify our behavior, right? Because this is getting me terrible results. Every time I go in shouting at the top of my voice, I'm a gypsy and I love my MAGA red hat, I find myself in some quite difficult situations in life. Not that there's anything wrong with any of those things necessarily, but in the current context, they could be a little bit difficult. Funny how I have not labeled myself or anyone else with expat, immigrant, etc. I really haven't thought about this until I saw your question posted. Well, sorry about that. The genie is out the bottle now. Shannon's here, who has lived in Canada, New Zealand, Australia, Italy, and now to Portugal. Interesting conversation. You say, Shannon, thank you for being here. Loads of Portuguese houses have tiled flags from different countries, usually a Portuguese one crossed by another country's Spain, Venezuela, USA. That thing about flags, Veronica, what I was saying, and I do feel a little bit bad about it, is what I saw about how I love how patriotic Portuguese people are with their flag, but I'm not so charmed by my British countrymen waving flags. And I don't mean here necessarily. I mean when I drive around home in UK and there's like flags up everywhere, it's because I think I understand the context a little bit different. They're making a point of sort of nationalism, and it might be around a certain time or election, and the information I'm getting is different to the information I think I'm getting when I see lots of Portuguese flags and I think it's about football and happy times and food. I don't think
in America, that's the one thing that does unify us is our flag. It's a very unifying thing. When you're a young child in Girl Scouts and Boy Scouts, you're taught to respect the flag. And even growing up and then coming from a military family, you were always taught that you respect the position as well. So you respect the flag and you respect the position of commander in chief. Whether or not you voted for that person is now the commander in chief and commands respect. Now, their actions may not command respect, but the position does. And it's a very unifying thing. So when when we had 9/11 hit, I think they were trying to, whatever happened with that, it was intended to be divisive. And the next day, everybody had their flag out front to show unity and to show, this is not going to let us get us down. We're going to bond together as one unified presence and help each other through this. So I think for me, it was hurtful when you come to another country and you say, I'm now going to plant my beliefs, my unification on your unification, right? Like
so almost like weaponizing things, I suppose.
I just think you've chosen to be here in their country. It's a good idea if you want to matriculate and to become part of the culture, to accept that culture and love it and learn it. And that's why we're here, right? We're not just here for no reason. We're here to really learn and love the culture and love the history and all the places around it, Spain and every place we can get to, right? Traditionally as Americans, because, we still giggle every time we see a castle and go, it's a castle. But it's been 6 years. Yes, 6 years.
I think that's the point.
You're just so happy you don't know what to do. It's a castle.
That's the point Andy's making here, I think, isn't it? Quite a good look, if you like. Is this is my flag and this is your flag together in the garden. I enjoy seeing that. Where there's someone who's a foreigner here, and they put their national flag next to the Portuguese flag, and that says to me like I have my own identity. It would be a lie to suggest I don't have an identity I've brought with me. It's embodied in this flag, and it's next to the Portuguese flag in my garden, which, as you say, Veronica, I'm attempting to assimilate or matriculate with. So that's a nice.
Well, and it's the why. Why did you put it? You did it because you want to say, "Look, I'm both." Or other people doing it to say, "I'm not you. I'm here."
You're indecisive.
Everyone
can interpret differently. I mean, why would we walk into an Italian restaurant and at the top of our lungs shout, "Chinese food is the best"? I mean, why would we do that? That's the question.
Why?
And to me, a lot of it, anytime there's controversy and conflict, it's about ego. I need to state my identity. I need to defend my identity in some way or another. And then we're all going to make it mean whatever we make it mean. So
one of the things that we as Americans need to keep in mind is our relative brevity, right? In relation to historical perspective. Here we are, 3 contributors, and we're all American, and we have one host who's a Brit. And something I was thinking about in relation to this conversation is from the British perspective. I'm sure you've all been to Porto and been to some of the wineries there, or the making port. And if you look at the history and some of the information that you learn about those, many of them are actually British families from 300, 400 years ago, longer than the US has been around. and they definitely speak Portuguese, but they also keep their identity as having come from Britain. As we know, Britain has the longest international treaty with Portugal, dating back to the 1300s.
Yep.
So our perspective as Americans is grotesquely brief in relationship to where we live. And so we might pontificate about this, that, and the other thing. But how do those British port manufacturers or vineyards identify as themselves? I mean, would they say they're British? Would they say that they're Portuguese? Would we say that they're expats? Would we say they're foreign nationals? Would we say that they were immigrants? It's like, part of it maybe doesn't matter. It's like, look, they live here. They've been here for 400 years. It's just, well, like we as Americans, okay, we used to live in America, and we trace our backgrounds, like in my case, back to the 1600s. But I don't necessarily consider myself British because that's where we came from. But I would say, I'm an American. But so, it's just interesting that what kind of a historical perspective that one would think when we're interacting with a culture or even an expat culture that's literally been here for hundreds of years. Curious what people think of that.
Well, that's a great insight, John. It really is. To answer your question about those Brits who came for port, that I've come up with a new phrase for them. They are alcolonials, the ones who colonized based on alcohol. So that's a new thing, and it's going to be on Wikipedia later on today. The alcolonials.
Port?
Great. I mean,
port manufacturers are Portuguese.
Go viral.
And why, albeit a grotesquely brief part of human culture and history, potentially, although derived and extracted from other people, of course, because we all are. It's interesting what I love about Americans is how passionate they are about asking these questions and discussing them. And it's exemplified for me by the constant articles you see are Americans ruining Portugal type articles. And
there's like 700 of us.
That's right.
Yeah, all 7,000 of us. Yeah,
there are less than 10,000 Americans in Portugal. Wait, it's 19th out of the groups of people, nationalities that come to Portugal on the charts. 19th out of 20.
Full of ourselves.
Less than 10,000 people. And
it's perhaps a little slimmer.
perhaps the most introspective and open to the conversation. And maybe you could say because other people are too busy working, picking vegetables or whatever to be having these conversations. But that, I think we're doing the second best thing about this, which is having a conversation. My first best thing and my kind of final question for you and people watching is how do we take the action on this? How do we represent ourselves to the government? How do we put ourselves in a position where the government might ask us questions about what it's like to use CEF, for example, as one aspect of things? Or how can we be responsible migrants? How can we work in conjunction with local and national government? How can we reach out to those other 19 nationalities that are in that list of 20? For me, that's not happening yet. And I would love to see it happen. And that's why I say talking about it is second best. And first best would be for us to have something like the Portugal Immigrant Network be something of a lobby group, of a advisory body, a panel, a round table, and turn these sorts of conversations into useful things where nationalities coming to Portugal are talking to each other and talking to our Portuguese host as well. So can I start with an insight on that with you, James? Big sigh.
The breadth there's a lot in that. And ultimately, again, sometimes I feel like I'm just repeating myself over and over, but these are key elements to me of being a healthy, informed, conscious human being. And that is, what do I control?
Yeah.
Very straightforward. I control my thoughts, my words, my actions. That's the only thing I can control. So then if I can approach the question from that understanding, then I can let go of all the things I have absolutely no control over, which is virtually everything. But how then do I, as an immigrant, try to assure the most positive impact I can. Well, that's with what I control. So I would be looking at my thoughts, my words, and my actions within the context of being an immigrant. What are those things? The only thing I have over anyone else is influence, and that's going to come as a result of my words and my actions. So to me, it's an individual thing, and it only becomes impactful on a large scale when enough individuals are approaching their impact in the same way. What is my personal impact? If I look at how do I impact the culture of the Portuguese, it's like not at all, with the exception of the immediate friendships and relationships I have that I can influence by virtue of my presence. So I need to get over this idea that I can change anything out there. I can't. I don't have that power. I don't have that control. What I have power and control over is me and how I choose to interact with the world around me. And from that, hopefully, I can influence a positive impact on a larger level.
Yeah.
So,
Thank you for that,
peace
James.
begins with me, and someone made the joke about that. Not me, James. All of us. The me.
We're all waiting for you, James. He
Right.
said it on the show once. Peace begins with him, and the whole world's waiting.
Right.
James.
Me only, remember that, and elect me for president of the world.
This was all just a ruse to have you launch your political aspirations and campaign, right?
Yes.
Here today on
And labels and controversy and ego defense, none of that helps. None of it helps.
All right.
We can
Well,
pull
I think
ourselves out of that and make conscious choices. That to me is where it's at.
Thank you very much. Carl, why am I triggered? This is what's happening. People need to look at their feelings and own them. It would be a good start, wouldn't it? And thank you for that, Portuguese, and finding that
They
helpful.
need to, Carl.
They must. They should, right? Let's should on everybody right now. So to you, John, on this matter of how we reach out, I am accused sometimes of, I need to slow down a bit. It is quite a big aspiration, representation to local and national government about how we're having an impact on the culture. Any ideas from you, John, on that? Or would you stay sort of closer to home, as James is suggesting?
I don't know. I would say we need more non-Americans on the immigrant network.
Yes, that's a given. I was going to say I don't think anyone would disagree with that. I'm sure we can find somebody.
But I'm staying.
Well said. Well said. Yeah.
We need more Brits to contribute. We need more Belgians and Danish and Norwegians and Ukrainians
Portuguese.
And other people.
Brazilians, Portuguese. Yeah.
Brazilians, exactly.
So having a big party would be a good start to this, I'm thinking.
Big party with food. Yep.
Big party. We got a checklist. We'll play sort of nationality bingo, and you've got to have one person from each. And that's just the start of it. Those 20 countries. They're by no means an exhaustive list of the nationalities in Portugal, I'm sure. But it'll be a really good start, wouldn't it, for us to get away from the generally American and British representation that our community and again, there's no sense of guilt or shame in that. That is who we are, and proudly so. Yeah. On many levels, and we could complement and augment that, right, John?
Well, as we all know, I mean, there are networks of Americans in Portugal or whatever, and it's like, man, that's fine, but I don't have an interest in being part of that group because I don't need that reinforced necessarily. I know who I am, I know where I come from, but I know who my friends are. So I think we should try to focus on all of us.
Yeah, thank you, John. Veronica, you're American, aren't you?
What? An American in Portugal?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah, that thing. I love everything that everyone said. And I just, the thoughts, words, and actions to me ring true. And based on my life experiences, and maybe because I during COVID became this connector, to people who wanted to move here. And it wasn't, I'm supposed to be retired. And all of a sudden, here's this other thing that pops up. Next thing I know, I'm connecting everybody. And I think within those connections, we're able to elicit change in small doses. So as we get together as a group, we find, at least the people that I hang out with sometimes, to have that connectivity as an expat group, because there's all those little questions. How did you get through your SCF appointment, and what was different, and what address? And we all kind of help each other with this, especially during that first year. And if we can help each other, it's phenomenal. And seeing those groups then elicit change, because one of the first things I get asked many times when people are thinking about moving here is, how can I help? And I think that is truly American. I mean, it's everywhere, but it's like it's ingrained in you. You will go over and make a difference. And what's lovely is we have so many people here coming here retired with these fabulous life experiences. And so we've had teachers that have been able to help. With my neighbor who works with autistic children in the schools, they were able to give relief because they're trained in America. That's their job. So they come over. These teachers weren't even getting a break at lunchtime. And ReFood, they love to join the group. So like ReFood, and we have people who have done a ton with the dog charities, because we see what happens with the dogs here. And I think that when you go in and you say, I want to help, and that makes you feel integrated in the community, and you can elicit change, then that is how we kind of do bond together. And definitely Carl's group to joining as a group to elicit change in the nation, national change, because there are things that do impact us differently, because the NHR doesn't affect us as much if you're on a pension income, and because the dual taxation treaty, right? So if we're taxed in America, we won't be taxed here. So the 10% is null and void. However, they're going to start taxing our Social Security. So we need to bond together as a group to go, wait a minute, that violates the dual taxation treaty. And how are we as a group going to get together and get enough numbers to say this isn't, it doesn't agree with those treaties? And so I don't think it's all inclusive. Like, you can't be one without the other. Like, you still need some of your expat friends when you're here. You might need it longer or shorter. You might not need it at all. But there's definite positives that we can do together to help each other versus each of us trying to do it alone.
Yep. Thank you very much for that, Veronica. Let's go to the last few comments then. It's a great network of international folks helping each other and the community. I think that's the groups you're talking about down there where you live in Portimao, Victoria, and maybe more generally across the Algarve there. And long may it continue. I love that, what you mentioned there, Veronica, about people helping people. There is an urge in all of us to do that. And I think it's quite a natural urge once you've settled in, isn't it, to want to look outwards once you've got your most immediate kind of hierarchy of needs taken care of. A few more points. Why couldn't you put up your national flag because you like it? You could. And then you, I think, also perhaps can be open to what disturbances in the force are caused by it. I mean, that's the whole thing, isn't it, about social feedback and how we operate as human beings. No problem with that. And interestingly,
go back to that. Why are you putting up your flag? Because you want to show unity, or because you're trying to say, I'm here and I'm loud and I'm proud?
And if you're going to, Carl says, morning, Carl, hi, the Englishman in Lisbon. If you're going to fly your flag of origin, at least cross it with the Portuguese flag. Show some solidarity, unity, and appreciation with your adopted country. That's a nice idea. On flags, Nuno, a scout says, Boy Scouting is much more about the scarf than the flag. Now, isn't that interesting how we might move from the emblem of the flag into the symbolism of a piece of clothing? And so that will be my final question then. What piece of clothing? And I'm not talking about a brokini or a thong or anything smutty like that, but what kind of expat apparel could we have that will be embodied with these, what we've talked about this morning, an ability to be self-reflective, an ability to help others. I mean, we could have some sort of expat emblem that was created by our community, right? So what might it be, James? A cowboy hat? No, it's not a cowboy hat.
The first thought I had was camouflage.
But then we can't see you. If you're camouflaged, you disappear, right? It's not
he's blending in. Right, yeah. He's perfect.
Blending in. There we go.
I
look like the plane tree bark.
Yeah.
Just stand next to it. I don't have an answer to that. I'm not a huge, that's an understatement. I'm not a nationalist. I don't want to represent my existence by the flag that I wave. None of that is important to me. So labels are not important to me. As a therapist, I don't diagnose. I think in most cases, labels are harmful, not helpful. And at the most, they're very shallow. They just give you kind of a glimpse into how someone might be as a human being. So for me, it's
I have
all
an
about
idea. I'll be right back. Hold on.
on a personal level. How
Oh
do
no, he's
I
going to bring a flag.
We can't go anywhere.
can't tolerate this.
Well, we have triggered Portuglish. He said, "Are you doing?" I tried to call in. Are you doing a call in? Now I understand why phone-in hosts ask you to phone in every 30 seconds or so. I mean, I thought I'd said it enough this morning that people could phone in, but clearly not. I do need to say it every 2 minutes. You've missed
And I
your
did
chance.
reply to that, by the way. So
Yeah, you
to
did,
let-
and you've missed your
Oh.
chance there, Portuglish.
Here's my idea.
Did
Right.
you change your T-shirt, or did I just miss
No,
it?
have you guys seen this T-shirt?
No,
We can't
Uh-oh.
see
Oh
it now.
yeah, it's camouflage.
it's camouflage. He disappeared.
It's an invisibility cape. Right.
Oh,
There you
okay.
go.
Have you seen this?
The Portuguese football jersey.
It's the Portuguese football jersey. It's the practice jersey. But if you look at it carefully, what is it?
It's a mosaic, isn't it, of different pieces interlocking together.
It's a mosaic of each region within Portugal.
Ooh,
Nice.
very nice.
So each region has
Look
its
at you
own.
all.
Each region has its own flag, but together they are Portugal.
Oh,
And so the
that's
idea
quite
would be like each one of our own little, like I have a flag of Colorado, and I'm sure there's a flag of California, there's a flag of each one of our states, and I'm sure within England, each region there has their own flag, their own characteristic, and Belgium and other places, Germany, and together there could be a mosaic of something that looks cohesive as a whole.
Oh wait, that was bad.
Sorry, Veronica distracted me there, and I'm sure I'm not the only one, right? But yes, John, I love the idea of a mosaic top. That was probably one of the quickest costume changes I have ever seen. Okay, yeah, everybody, lads, come on, get tops off. Veronica, that was a great costume change. Possibly the good effort, James, but not quite. No cigar.
I was trying to sit up higher, and I'm doing this, and I'm like, oh, we're gonna get in trouble.
If you could stop that would be great. But that is a lovely vest. There you go. A few suggestions, everybody, about what you might do. Wonderful. And yes,
I'm gonna
already.
fall over.
Yes, that's quite hot, Veronica. I've triggered Portuglish, who's been thwarted in his attempt to call in. Your on-air sign, your on-air lamp, sir, is being ignored. I feel your pain. Right. I have a great photo, says Barandi, finally then, of my daughter on stage holding the Portuguese flag, singing the national anthem with her class. That's a moment, isn't it? And Sue's bought a Portugal flag. A Canadian flag. Canadian flag can opener. That's interesting, isn't it? Putting the can in Canada there at the airport on my way here. A little reminder. And my 15-year-old cranked up the hairdryer next to me on a Zoom meeting this morning. Expat problems. Okay, we can't help with that right now. But I just want to thank everybody for sudden changes of costume, ideas, thoughtful insight and reflection on all of these things. Can we have our photograph taken with you doing that, Veronica? You're like the total... Portuguese merchandise now available at the American in Portugal online shop. By the is that an envelope holder as well? It's that
No,
one?
this is for
yours?
napkins. It's my napkin holder.
It's not to put all your letters from Finances in. No, okay.
Maybe that's what it's really for.
It's not big enough. It's not big enough. Okay. Thank you so much. It's been amazing this morning. Flashbacks to an old episode of The Man Cave with Changing Tops. I know which I prefer. And a final thought then from Portuguese, it's the people that make the place. I have felt the love and acceptance from Portuguese people, and I genuinely love the country because of the people. And we had Filomena joining us. Very well, Veronica. Muito bem from you. I live for the Muito bens from Filomena, and you got one this morning, Veronica. and she is up for a party. So let's have that party happening of all the people from all the countries around the world and coming together. It's the food, isn't it? The food and the music which can lead the way with this sort of stuff. So thank you, Veronica.
Wine, food, family, wine.
Food, family, and wine.
We are the world in the back of my mind.
Okay, well, you need to draw the lines.
Children.
All right,
Thanks,
thanks,
make the world a better place.
Take care. Bye for now. Ciao, ciao.
In Portugal, there's a YouTube show full of fun facts you need to know. Carl rings the bell and the members show to the GMP morning show. Featured guests will come and they will blow your mind. The audience will do so in kind. The little vanity mixed with some insanity on the morning show with GMP.
Good morning, Portugal, and I'd like to welcome you to another fantastic day.
Hey, Gumpers.